We're back, people. We are back, your favorite. And I'm never lying when I say this on a Thursday night. We are back, your favorite sports podcast from the airwaves, rolling with Ramos. I happen to be the one that holds the last name Ramos. I would like to specifically thank my daddy for that one, Mike Ramos in heaven. Can't believe it's about to be 2 years without you, brother. I miss you. Episode 103. We're doing things a little bit differently because we can't find 103 to make it look nice when it comes on the screen for you. That's a lot of freaking numbers. Granted, we're at 103. We'll give you that. And we'll give ourselves that. But to make this a little bit interesting, to go back to our original roots, because we used to name the shows after the person that wore the jersey, we missed a couple of people, had a couple honorable mentions. So what you experienced before we got to 100 was our season 1. This, after 100, will be our season 2. So technically speaking, episode 103, and we pay homage to another guy that wore the number 3, who wore it best. I bet you can never tell me, can you? Episode 103, The Flash, the Dwyane Wade edition. And, not to be undone, for me to be without him, I'm the one that goes through all the issues, but he's the star and he puts this all together. Tristan, hello.
What's going on? Another Thursday on the show. We're definitely excited about to get this underway. There's definitely a lot to talk about. A lot happened in this week alone between Saturday and Thursday. So much has gone through. So I'm ready to tackle everything that we got going on.
We start in boxing, and we start in boxing thanks to somebody. Sometimes people reach out to me. They make my job a little bit easier because normally I got to reach out to them. This guy, Chris Johnson, 1992 Olympic bronze medalist, trainer of 2-time world champion Stephen Molitor. He reached out to me on Instagram. He said he wanted to talk boxing with us, Tristan. Chris Johnson, you are rolling with Ramos. Welcome.
It is a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm very excited. I love to talk boxing. And I want to, empower the knowledge of people with the boxing.
Word on the street is, if I was listening correctly as I was trying to get in this Zoom, that we have a mutual friend. Who is it?
Morgan Campbell.
All the way in the 6. That's the friend we share. Shout out to Morgan Campbell, who's doing so many great things out there in Canada, Toronto, all that good stuff that he does. He's a great sports journalist. Who knew that was our connection?
I call him Howard Cosell. That's my Howard Cosell.
Let's start this thing, guys. I don't know if this was sponsored by AARP, but in the event they wanted to sponsor it, they might have got a lot of money. Boxing's card last week was Fight Night. Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson. Tyson and Jones Jr. showcased their skills over 8 2-minute rounds on Saturday in Los Angeles, according to CBS Sports. Ahead of Saturday's exhibition fight between boxing legends Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., it was impossible to predict what would happen in the ring. At a combined 105 years of age, and with uncertainty over the rules ahead of the event, an already unpredictable situation felt even harder to figure out. But once the men got into the ring, they went as hard as could be asked for over 8 2-minute rounds, leading to a split draw on the WBC assigned judges scoreboard. The fight was a little rough around the edges, with neither man committing to a true volume of strikes. Neither seemed to throw more than or 2 punches at a time before ending up in the clinch to be broken up by referee Ray Corona. Tyson occasionally landed his trademark left hook at a distance, while Jones showed flashes of his old self with no-look jabs and showboating the boat. Tyson seemed to pile up most of the early rounds, landing the cleaner punches and muscling Jones in the clinch. Jones was the most visibly fatigued man in the corner between rounds, but he continued to try to gut out the fight, turning up his volume in the later rounds. This despite Tyson being far more removed from his time as a professional fighter. Jones's late work served to score him enough late rounds to earn the win on one scorecard and a draw on the other, with Tyson winning the third scorecard. The fight was left a somewhat unsatisfying draw. While Tyson said he was happy with the results, Jones was less than thrilled, saying after the fight, "I wear draws. I don't do draws." Question, Chris, you're on the mark first. Jones Jr., Iron Mike, how did you feel about it? Was it nostalgic?
You know what? Watching it, I was very excited to watch it because these are two of the biggest fighters in the last 30 years, and to see them come out. I mean, they're a lot older. You can't expect the guys of the great guys they were when they're in their youth, but they put on a show, and I think it's going to set the precedent for other fighters to come out. There's going to be a lot of fighters that's going to come out of the woodwork just to showcase themselves, to show that age is just a number at the end of the day. And I think what Roy Jones and Mike Tyson did, it showed people there is life after 50 years old. So I was excited to watch it. I mean, it was entertaining. Mike Tyson brought out the singers, the stars, only like he could. And could you imagine if the corona was not on and there was allowed to be people in the audience, the star quality that Mike Tyson would have brought to the arena? That excites me. And I think that he's such a great promoter. He don't get enough credit for promoting that event.
Mike Tyson, forever the star. We all know what he was in his prime. He brings him out with him and Roy Jones Jr., Tristan. He still got the Midas touch in pay-per-view. How you feel about it?
Well, listen, I agree. I agree with Chris the same way. I mean, when I watched it, well, first of all, my dad is the one that got me into boxing when I was a kid. And so Mike Tyson was always like my favorite growing up because I didn't care about the flash and all that. Like, I love the fact he had the cut up towel and the black trunks, black trim, and just coming in there, and it's the hurt business. Like, that's all he was about. And looking at this fight, you saw he had the same bad intentions. Like, when they kept saying, well, it's only an exhibition, it's only this, and even Mike Tyson himself saying, it's only an exhibition, we're doing this for charity, we're doing this, da-da-da. But when it came to going into that square circle, as they call it, when he got in between those ropes, he had bad intentions with every hit. There were even moments in the fight where you saw he was getting a little frustrated because Roy Jones, the smart man that he is, kept trying to wrap him up every time that, he had one of those shots. He definitely paid for it in the midsection, but you could tell Tyson had some bad intentions. He doesn't know how to exhibition box. I don't even know how that even works, really, the exhibition box. It's just all about, am I going to put hurt on you or you going to put hurt on me? So I love seeing that with Mike Tyson. I know a lot of people, they criticize it, saying like two old dudes going at it, but I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it like this was a fantasy fight, a nostalgia fight per se, to watch two of the greatest to ever do it, get in there, especially from Mike Tyson. Me being such a fan, I was so happy to see it.
You know what it felt like? It felt like 3-on-3. It felt like Ice Cube and him getting, because that all came from Kobe's retirement game. And he's like, we'll never get a chance to see these guys again. And now you have the nostalgia of having, even if it's half court, you have Allen Iverson half court out there again. This is what it felt like, the 3-on-3 tournament. After the fight, and another combination that speaking of Mike Tyson, you don't realize how many combinations that he have. Him and Jim Gray go together like peanut butter and jelly in boxing. But anyways, after the fight, Tyson told interviewer Jim Gray that he planned to move forward fighting more exhibitions and even seemed interested in running it back with Jones. I'm used to doing it for 3 minutes, Tyson said of the rounds. Sometimes that 2 minutes felt like 3 minutes. I'm happy I got this under my belt to keep doing this and go further. Jones was less committed to fighting again, stating simply that it was hard to say Tyson did shut down any idea of coming back to the ring as a professional, however. But there's one person, speaking of that called Mike out after seeing this. Evander Holyfield. Heard about the hype behind a 54-year-old Mike Tyson returning to the ring to fight a 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr., and he decided he wanted in on the action. The former undisputed heavyweight champion has called out Iron Mike for one last bout between the two middle-aged men. No more excuses, said Holyfield in a statement, per Reuters. This is the fight that must happen for both our legacies. Saturday night, you said you were ready to fight me. So sign the contract and get in the ring, Tyson. The world is waiting, and it's on you now. I'm ready. The first time Tyson and Holyfield fought ended in an 11th round TKO for Holyfield, while the second one infamously ended up with Tyson being disqualified for biting a chunk. That was more than a chunk. Out of Holyfield's ear off. Chris, can these two run it back with each other or without now Evander Holyfield's in the mix? These exhibition matches between legends are becoming a style, or should we shut them down?
You know what? I think if they run it back, you can't consider it an exhibition. No. There's no way you can call that an exhibition. It's going to be a full-blown fight. You see, Mike Tyson was courageous in the fight with Roy Jones. He pulled back some of his punches. He did certain things that, and at the same time, Roy at the same time was a little, he was a little scared, a little timid, because Mike Tyson is a heavyweight and he's very strong. But I think when Evander Holyfield steps in that ring, it is going to be more than an exhibition. It's going to be a full-out war, because that's the mentality of Evander Holyfield. And also within Tyson, he has that bitterness that he was beaten by this man twice, not once, twice. So at the end of the day, it's payback.
Tristan, are you feeling it? Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, the fight outside the ear, part 3.
No, listen, I agree. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's gonna be a fight. That's not an exhibition. That's not, the money might go to charity, but that's a grudge match, and that is a long awaited grudge match, because we didn't get to see it again. That's a long awaited grudge match that is going to happen. All they gotta do is sign, and it's a wrap. Like, people were hyped about the Roy Jones Tyson fight. No, this fight, Tyson and Holyfield. Oh, I mean, everybody's coming out to watch that. Virtually, of course.
There's so many interesting fights they can put together. I mean, just so interesting. They could go back to Lennox Lewis fighting Klitschko. There's just so many really interesting fights they can put together, even though these people are past their prime. It's still intriguing, as we saw with Roy Jones versus Mike Tyson. It's still intriguing after they're over in their 50s or whatever. Who's got what left? Who's got more left? It's like, at the end of the day, Roy Jones, to me, he depleted. I was around watching Roy, like I was there. I sparred with Roy. I sparred with Roy, so I know what Roy was made of. I got hit by him a couple of times, so I know what he was made of. And just to see his demise, how he just fell off, and then Mike Tyson, who you think should fall off, he still had that natural power and aggression. And you're watching like, whoa! You saw flashes of old Mike, of the old Mike and the new Mike. And you're like, wow, what's going to take place? And so this is the first fight, and he plans to do more. And I think he's only going to get better as he goes along.
So those Instagram videos was killing me. I'm like, Roy, I was looking at Roy like, you really want to do this? Mike looking like Mike.
Yeah, but that was like 5-10 seconds of videos. They weren't like ongoing. So you could say anybody can look good in 5-10 seconds.
Right.
Anybody can do that. But when he got in that ring, you realize, oh smokes, he does still have some of the Tyson left in it.
So Chris, I want to ask this question real quick to you in regards, because you having that experience of sparring with Roy Jones. as I was a fan of Roy Jones Jr., and I loved how he would go into different weight classes and win the titles. I love that, that he was just ready to fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. I always looked at him as a superior athlete that got hands. Whereas I look at Tyson as just a fighter.
He's a machine.
Yeah, it's just so that was my thing going into this fight. I was like, an athlete's athletic ability is going to diminish after a while. You can't sustain that forever. But I just feel like there's some people that are just built to be a fighter, and Mike Tyson is that guy. And even in the fight, I was watching it, I'm like, you look at Roy Jones, you can tell you are a 51-year-old man that used to be a great athlete, and it's just not what it used to be. Whereas Tyson is like, man, you look like you just needed to shake some rust off.
You know what it is? I say this: in a great athlete, there's two different athletes. There is the young, smart one, and then there's the old, wise one. When you look at Roy Jones, he never got to the second one.
The old wise one.
He stayed the whole way throughout as the young, vibrant one. Even when he was older, he never changed or evolved what he was doing. He was just doing trying the same speed, same movement. So when he was getting hit and getting knocked out again, he could never transition. But there's fighters like Ali, like Muhammad Ali, that has that second fight in them, that they relax and learn from the experience and start using the experience where they learn from. I don't think Roy Jones ever got that space. And I think that's what deteriorated him so fast. And the fact that he fought for the heavyweight championship of the world, won it, and then went back down to light heavyweight.
Right,
that crushed him. That he was never the same after that. After that, he got knocked out. I think he's been knocked out about 5 times. And one of my favorite fighters, actually, one of my top favorite fighters of all time is Roy Jones. I was in the ring with him, and usually when I'm in the ring with someone, I could never call him my favorite, but this guy was something special. Never seen anything like him. The only person I can compare him to, the two fighters that I compare to, Sugar Ray Robinson and Sugar Ray Leonard.
Wow.
Speaking of special, America loves numbers. Wants to know how much money it was made of it. Speaking of by the numbers, according to SB Nation, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. shatters expectations with over 1 million pay-per-view buys. The card headlined by Tyson's 8-round exhibition against Roy Jones Jr. was promoted by Triller, an upstart social media company, sold over 1 million pay-per-views across linear television platforms, satellite, as well as online sales through Fight TV. The news was initially reported by boxing insider Dan Rafael, who stated that Tyson versus Jones pay-per-view netted about 1.2 million buys. Triller gambled on the success of an exhibition bout, with the pay-per-view selling for $49.95. Assuming Tyson versus Jones ultimately sells over 1.2 million pay-per-views, that would make the card one of the most successful events of the entire year, alongside UFC 251, which took place in July, reportedly garnered just over 1.3 million buys for a card headlined by welterweight champion Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal. Those sales figures would also put Tyson versus Jones Jr. ahead of the second biggest boxing card of the year, with Tyson Fury defeating Deontay Wilder in their rematch, with the fight reportedly selling between 800,000 to 850,000 pay-per-views. During the prime of his career, Tyson was one of boxing's biggest draws, if we're talking about promotion here, with his fights routinely drawing more than 1 million pay-per-view buys. His 2 fights against Evander Holyfield and showdown with Lennox Lewis all drew well over 1 million buys. Now we're going to talk about the Young Bucks coming up next, but to see Mike Tyson not in his prime, but where he is now, and to see what this fight was able to do when we looking at by the numbers, how great was this for boxing?
You asking me that?
You can
Go
go.
ahead,
How great was it for boxing? You know, I mean, boxing has had its black eyes in the last few years, you know, but I think that it's going to get more attention. It's going to get more attention than it has in a long time with Tyson back, because he plans to promote more cards. I don't know how many cards a year he's going to promote, but I think that everything Mike Tyson touches turns to gold, because everybody loves Mike Tyson. Everybody loves Mike Tyson.
Don't tell Oscar De La Hoya that he's no longer the golden boy.
Yeah. Well, even the Golden Boy wants to make a return to the ring. He's calling out everybody, Golden Boy. Golden Boy wants to put his hand in there. He thinks he can beat Triple G right now. So I mean, there's so many interesting fights that can come out of this. And which other promoter would you rather be with than Mike Tyson? Because I cannot wait till this Corona thing's over to see him pack the house with stars. Stars. I mean, women dressed in elegant dresses and men in suits. I can't wait.
Yeah. He's
definitely having Steve Harvey look like he don't host Family Feud yelling at Tristan. Boxing, big night.
It was a huge night, and I think
Oscar De La Hoya, please stop it with Triple G.
I don't want to see that massacre. But but even past the numbers, I think you needed something like this. It's the kind of fight where I don't think anyone looked for them to be who they were years ago. Like, that would have been ignorant. But it's the fact that I think at boxing's peak, when you had these guys in the ring, the fans, you got the old fans, and then you got the new fans to kind of try to appreciate what you saw, because you're not only looking at the fight.
Isn't it nostalgia? Isn't it a little bit of nostalgia?
Yeah, it's just when they were promoting the fight, and you're watching all these old clips of Roy Jones and Mike Tyson in their prime and what they did, and then they're going over their records and what they did and how many knockouts and the time of their knockout. So now for a lot of us that grew up watching it, that nostalgia came back. It's like, I just gotta see it. I know they're in their 50s. I get it. I understand, but I gotta see it. And then the new fans that like the Triple G's of the world, the Canelo Alvarez's of the world, and all these guys, now they can see, these are the guys that you were talking about. These are the guys that y'all were describing when y'all try to compare these young fighters to them. Like, this is what you were saying. And so I think it's going to bring a new appreciation back into the sport, and also bring some of the old fans that kind of turned away from it after a while, bringing them back in, because now we want to see it. And like Chris said, this isn't just a one shot. We're going to see more fights like this with some of these older guys. That's like, hey, maybe I can give it a go for 2-minute rounds or whatever, and see what I can do in there. So I think this was huge for boxing to have this come off.
I think if we're not careful, in 2 or 3 fights, Mike Tyson might warm up so good that he'll be fighting for the actual heavyweight championship of the world. Tyson versus Tyson.
For sure.
Wow.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't put it past Tyson. Not from what I saw on Saturday. I really wouldn't put it past him, because it didn't look like an old guy fighting. It looked like someone that didn't fight for a long time, and he's shaking off some rust.
And he took it serious.
And he took the proper warm-up fight. He took somebody that was not a big puncher.
Right.
He took the proper warm-up. He's very thinking, put a thought through this. He knew he didn't want to go in there with a puncher his first fight back. He wanted to go in there with someone that he wasn't going to be afraid of. So everything Mike does is strategical. There's a thought process through this. So I wouldn't be so surprised if we don't see him fight heavyweight championship of the world.
I agree.
Tyson versus Tyson. That's good. What a headline.
I would love to see it.
Well, fellas, I gotta take it down a notch because we saw the elegance and the greatness of boxing, but we also saw the funniness of it because the fight before that spawned a whole lot of memes. This was not so great boxing. Funny, very, very funny.
Very
but
funny.
I'm glad he's okay. The Tyson Jones Jr. card was boasted by a boxing match featuring social media star Jake Paul, who earned a vicious second-round knockout against ex-NBA player Nate Robinson in the co-main event. According to SportingNews.com, YouTuber Jake Paul took care of business with a brutal knockout. They calling this thing brutal. Brutal knockout of former NBA star Nate Robinson in round 2 of their scheduled 6-round fight. Paul got to work early, knocking Robinson down 2 times in the first round. He knocked him down once more at the start of round 2 before ultimately delivering the knockout blow. Robinson laid on the canvas for several minutes before eventually getting up. The fight wasn't impressive considering how short the fight was. Jake Paul, he threw 38 punches. He landed 8, 21%. Nate Robinson, he threw 56. He had only landed 10. He had an 87%. With the win, Paul moves to 2-0 as a professional boxer. He won via TKO in his first fight and gets a KO in the second fight. Paul said in the ring afterward that he's ready to take on someone else. Fellas, now listen, I ain't going pound for pound. I take a couple boxing classes. I know that it takes everything out of you, and you gotta shout out to Knockout Fitness in Baltimore, Maryland, one of the best boxing gyms in the city. Shout out to them. But anyways, take a couple classes. People say, "Oh, you box." First of all, not going in the ring, not going pound for pound. I'm not gonna do what I know I can't do. I'm gonna stick to the sports and telling you about it. When we start to mix, match, and cross multiply, when we talking about going into sports, not everybody can be Deion Sanders, baby. How much did Nate Robinson learn the hard way?
Go ahead, Chris. You go ahead. You're the expert.
I think here's my thought. I think that Nate Robinson was successful as a basketball player and walk around feeling great when they tell him how great he is. And an athlete like him thinks he can do the impossible. And they don't understand that boxing is different from every other sport there is. When somebody is in the ring in front of you trying to take your head off, it's not the same as you having a slam dunk. Just not the same. And he felt that because he was so athletic, he could go in there and work off of his left athleticism. But there's one thing, when you get hit, everything goes out the door. And he got hit.
Everybody got a plan until they get knocked out. Shout out to Mike.
Mike said. Yeah.
Tristan, you know, we're this social media age. They had Simba next to him telling them to get up. This social media age can be very cruel. On top of that, it could be very funny. What did you take from this fight? Did you see what Gilbert Arenas sent them?
I did.
I didn't know if he was trying to encourage the guy or make fun of it, saying you kind of got crossed by Allen Iverson a couple times. That didn't stop you. So I don't know how we're gonna equate this to boxing and getting knocked out on live television. But Tristan, Nate Robinson, Jake Paul, he's big and bad now, Jake Paul.
Well, listen. It was I almost wasn't sure which one I was more excited for to watch between Tyson Roy Jones or this, and just because of the pure comedy of the whole situation with Jake Paul and Nate Robinson. Here's the thing. I've heard people say this phrase all the time. They say you can play basketball, you can play football, you can play baseball, You can't play boxing. You can't play boxing. They call it the hurt business for a reason. And it's just like, the thing about athletes like Nate Robinson, because people gotta understand, Nate Robinson wasn't also just a great basketball player. Nate Robinson was actually a really good football player. Played at the University of Washington, played as a corner and safety. He even tried out for the Seahawks in the NFL. Like, he's a great athlete. But boxing is a lot more than just being an athlete. It's a whole lot more. And I feel like for Nate, the thing that bothered me about it was that I felt like I'm not saying he didn't try hard to prepare. I just didn't feel like you respected boxing enough to understand you can't just go in there and think you're fighting in the street.
Honestly, his trainer, whoever trained him, should be arrested.
Yes, because even out the gate, when the bell rung and you saw how Nate was charging at him, I'm like, wait a minute, wait. Like,
this is not track.
Exactly. Why slow down? Like, pace yourself in this, and it was just like, y'all allowed him to get in the ring. Y'all knew he wasn't going to do well in this. And I think for everybody that feels how they feel about Jake Paul, they got to understand Jake Paul has been doing this for a couple of years, and Jake Paul got heavy hands. His technique still needs to be worked on and all this stuff, but the man he got a hard hand, and he's been doing this for a couple of years. So he's taking it seriously enough.
Yeah, he takes it. It's life to him. He takes it seriously.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, Nate, you really thought you were just gonna walk in here and do something to him? Like, and I think for me, I'm like, you got to compare it to like Conor McGregor and Floyd when they did it, right?
Yeah.
Floyd was still able to tattoo Conor a bit because it's different from UFC. Like, you can't use your feet, bro. You can't grapple me like that, like how you do in UFC. You got to stand toe to toe and go strike for strike with me. And you saw how Conor was, and Conor is a professional fighter. But
Floyd could have knocked him out earlier.
Absolutely. Floyd literally did that for show and just extended it.
Floyd bet money on the round he knocked him out.
Probably did. No, Floyd.
Probably put, he's a gambler. Floyd probably put, I knock him out in the ninth round, put $5 million on it.
I guess Nate Robinson thought he was going to rip Hamilton his way around the ring, but that didn't happen. You feel me?
I mean, his stance, when he came out from the corner, his hand was like this. You knew he was in trouble.
When he was running, I was like, wait a minute, ain't you a stand there?
I'm like, protect your head, do something. He's here with it. I'm like, oh God.
He got dropped twice, didn't he? Dropped the first time and then got knocked the bleep out. Yes.
Put to sleep.
They had the Martin meme when he fought Hitman Jones. this Nate Robinson needs to take a cold shower, a long vacation. He needs to get out of Dodge for a minute. But the thing that you got to remember about Nate Robinson was always the smallest guy on the court with the biggest heart. You loved him as a basketball player and the passion that he brought as a basketball player.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about Russell Westbrook later, but Nate Robinson's kind of the same way. It either works one night or it doesn't work one night.
Right.
But you always commend him for going out there and and at least trying to put on a show and at least trying to.
I'm not commending him for getting in that ring.
I'm not commending him for this. He should.
No.
He should.
No.
If you needed a new hobby after retirement, this wasn't it. Like,
no. You're not getting props from me. No. You ain't getting props from me for that. All the people out there that defend Nate Robinson talking about something, well, it took a lot of guts. No, it took a lot of stupidity.
You know what it was? It was ego. It's his ego.
All ego. Yeah.
And his ego got crushed.
That's right. It was nothing about courage. That was all ego and stupidity. Because I'm not getting in the ring. I'm not a fighter.
Basketball. I won 3 basketball slam dunks. I played in the NBA. Oh, boxing is easy.
Exactly. And that's how I felt he treated it. That's how he treated it. Yeah.
Well, this next event is going to take us. This is in the right now. This is the prime. These are the people we want to talk about right now. Chris, we're going to go inside the ring. Tristan, we going inside the ring. I'm specifically going inside the ring with you, Chris, because you have ties to these people and you know these people, so you can give us the inside scoop. Because we had a nostalgic fight night. Saturday. We actually had fight night. Let's prelude this fight, gentlemen, shall we? Errol Spence Jr. versus Danny Garcia. New York meets Philly. This should be very interesting. Errol Spence Jr., according to badlefthook.com, SB Nation, we got to figure out who wins this, fellas. Errol Spence Jr. will be the favorite, but is there reason to be concerned? Is Danny Garcia a live dog? This week, we have another pay-per-view event. This one, $25 more if you're going to spend the money. More expensive, but there won't be any YouTubers declaring their godlike boxing skills or NBA players not even kind of, you embarrass themselves, or old guys going between 40 and 70% speed. This Saturday, PBC presents their final pay-per-view of 2020. So they're trying to go out with a bang with this one, as Errol Spence Jr. returns to defend the WBC IBF welterweight titles against former two-division title holder Danny Garcia. Spence, 26-0, 21 KOs, would have been a heavy favorite against Garcia, 36-2, 21 KOs, had this bout taken place in January as originally scheduled. But Spence is fairly lucky to even be alive after a horrific car crash last October, a few weeks after he beat Sean Porter to unify these two welterweight belts. But even in January, Garcia was not an opponent to take lightly. Never has been. Yes, he's got 2 losses, but both were very competitive, and he has held belts at 140 and 147. He's a crafty, smart boxer who doesn't get himself in trouble often. He has some pop, particularly in his counter left hook, and has been on the world title level for nearly a decade now. We don't know how Spence is going to look in the ring. He is saying the right things. He looks good in terms of his conditioning and all that. His interviews are the same as ever, really. But not only has he been out of the ring for 14 months, we just don't know what physical or mental toll that crash took on him until the bell sounds and we see him in action. Will Errol Spence stay unbeaten, and keep his claim as the top of the welterweight in the sport alive? Or will Danny Garcia pull an upset in what would be a career best win, at least on paper for him right now? Chris, you the expert. Take us into this. What are both camps looking at? Specifically Errol Spence's, if we're talking about the emotional toll coming back in the ring is going to take on him. What will we see for these guys if we can predict that? What's the outcome?
You know what? I think that the old Spence that we used to see is no more. I think he's no more. You remember that when I was talking about there is 2 fighters within a great fighter. The young wise one and the young hungry one and the older wiser one. Well, because of this car accident, your boy Errol Spence is going to have to go into the second phase of his career, meaning the stuff that he's going to be a lot more tactical, a lot more smarter, not the youthful coming after you trying to pound. He's going to have to think and be more cautious of everything he does. Personally, that's my favorite fighter out there right now, is Errol Spence. And just to see what he's gone through and how quickly he's gone through it and dealt with it and is back ready to fight, that is a true fighter. That's a true essence of a fighter. And I cannot bet against a fighter like that, because this was a life or death situation. And he comes back unscathed. The man flew out of the car head first, landed on his head through the window. And the man, 1 year later, is back at the highest level of the sport. And he could have He could have had an easy fight on his way back. He could have took an easy win, but no, he decides to go to the top of the boxing world and take on one of the best fighters, a champion like Garcia. So he's saying, no matter what, I am the best, and I respect it 100%. And I think he's going to come out Saturday night and he's going to put on a performance of his life, because it is his life, his own life that he saved. So he's going to put a performance on.
Where does that put Garcia?
Where does it put Garcia? Garcia, Garcia to me is a small welterweight compared to a guy like Earl Spence, who's been a welterweight his whole entire professional career, where Garcia has moved up. So Garcia will blend in. He might win another title. I don't know, but I just don't think he has enough to beat Errol Spence. I just don't think so, because the same fighter that Errol Spence is not the same fighter he was when he before the accident. He's gonna come a smarter fighter, and I expect to see that smarter fighter outbox and outmaneuver Garcia, just because of his size and sheer speed and power and thought process. It's going to be an on-edge fight for the first 3 or 4 rounds, but I think that Earl Spence will take it away after that.
Tristan, Errol Spence, Danny Garcia. What's your take?
I share the same sentiments as Chris. I was heartbroken when I heard about that accident with Errol Spence, and I was praying that he would just be alive. I didn't think that was something he was honestly was going to survive. And just like Chris said, for you to go through something like that, for you to have that kind of accident, and like you say, flew through the window. I mean, it wasn't like he was still in the car or anything like that. Like, you flew, and they said it was at a high speed, and not only to be able to come back and function, but to be able to step foot in a ring. It's unbelievable. I now, for me, I think I'm a little more fearful than Chris is in regards to it, because I'm thinking about all that. I'm thinking about what there, even though he's going back into the ring, something got taken from him with that accident. Something in him, it was taken away. You don't come back the same. I don't care who you are. You don't come back the same after.
I have to agree with you, but one of the things, I know his father, and his father has been in his career his entire life. And his father, one of the things I learned from his father, he loves his son more than he loves the boxing, or more than he brought his son into the boxing.
Right.
And the man is amazing. As a matter of fact, they came to see me in Jamaica last year. They both came to visit me in Jamaica. And the father loves his son. So I don't think if he wasn't okay, that the father would let him go back into it. The father is, like I said, he's just a lovely, great man. And I just watch him and just listen to him. The love that he's had for his son is just more powerful than the love that he has for his son boxing. So I think that he's been on top of it. He's brought him to the right doctors, correct doctors, to make sure they check the brain, and they've done everything they're supposed to do. I know that for a fact. So right. I think he's going to be all right at the end of the day, else he would not be in that ring, because the way the father loves him. The father's still the one that controls the destiny of his son. It's not his son that's in control. The father's in control, and I love that.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, like I said, I'm hoping that I'm wrong. You know, I want to agree with you wholeheartedly, because one, I think I never want to see a fighter. I never want to see an athlete on any stretch, any sport. I never want to see their career be taken away from them when they are at the height of their power. I never I never like to see it, whether it's on the field, on the court, in the ring, or an accident on the outside. I never want to see it taken away. So I want to see Errol Spence do amazing on Saturday.
I think if he had this, if he was going to come out with the same style, if he was coming out with the same style that he had before, where he's going. I think if he comes out with that same style, I'd be worried. But I think he's going to come out with a different style where he's more cautious and takes less risk, but the risks that he takes are right on point.
Got you. I'm excited to see it. I can't wait. I'm glad he's come back in the ring.
Chris, is there anybody else that we should be looking forward to out there that may not be in the headlines as much as we should? Tell them about the things that you're doing. We got to have you on to recap this fight because we got to see if your nice little crystal ball worked. So we got to see what happened.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have the brain. I do have the boxing brain.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have actually, I was in Jamaica for the last 2 years. I was there to help build a boxing program in Jamaica, because that is my homeland. And through the corona, things changed, and I came back to Canada. And as soon as I came back, I've been in touch with some of the young fighters coming up, and a lot of them have come to me and trained with me. But I do have one fighter that I've had from he was 10 years old. His name is Zote the Phenom Durrani, and he's 15-0 with 14 KOs. He's fighting in Connecticut. December 19th, and I'm so excited because, like I said, from the age of 10, I've been training this young man, and just to watch him evolve and watch him just, grow, the growth in him in the last little while. Like I said, he's a brilliant, the IQ of this kid. So you're going to hear about this kid. And the first time you're hearing about him is from me. And you're going to say, wow. You
heard it here first from Roland Ramos, baby.
I remember when Chris talked about this kid, and look at him rise. And he's 147 pounds, but he's 6 foot 1.5, built like a Thomas Hearns. And the thing is, he punches like Thomas Hearns with the right hand.
Wow. That's high praise.
One other thing I got to ask you about too. One last thing, because me and Tristan have this conversation all the time because we are on the 95 corridor, being from the DMV, but outside of the DMV, we got to pay attention to the guy that's given Baltimore it's on the map. Gervonta Tank Davis, we know he just got a big one in pay-per-view. As big as he is, he has shown that he can get these pay-per-view fights, and that he can be respected, and that he can actually win them, and people can stop trying to figure out who he hasn't fought yet and this and that. Every time there's a challenge in front of him, he's done it. He's behind Floyd Mayweather. You can't knock him for that. So he has the best promotion behind him. But he also seems to sometimes get into some trouble. His personal life overcasts his professional life sometimes.
Mike Tyson. One of the most
How great can Gervonta Tank Davis be? And will his camp be able to hone in life for him so he can continue to be great?
Mike Tyson, one of the most exciting, most powerful boxers on God's green earth ever. Now we compare Tank Davis to a Mike Tyson. Without the chaos going on in his world, I think it's hard for him to focus to be the best. There needs to be a little chaos in his world for him to bring out the best in himself. See, it was like Mike Tyson. There was always a little thing that was going on before his fights. They need that. They need that in their world for them to focus more. Because if they don't have that in their world, they lose focus, or they're gone all the way to the left.
Wow.
This young man, he is brilliant. To me, he's like I said, he's one of my favorite fighters. I love Errol Spence, but he's one of my favorite fighters as well. The power is numbing. It's not a normal power. It's something
when he hits you, the whole entire world changes in your head. It's like,
Wow.
I've never seen anyone like the punch he hit that last kid with.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Yeah.
It looked like a hammer hit the kid right on the chin.
Yeah.
And as soon as he hit him, his
out.
light was out. Where do you get that power from? Where? That's 100 and how many pounds? Where do you manifest all that power from? And I look at that, and it can only be God-given. And because it's God-given, he will explore it. It will be there for a while, and he will be successful. People talk this. The one thing is, I love Floyd because Floyd knows how to guide him. He respects Floyd to such a degree that he will follow after Floyd after a while. Because he will, all Floyd has to do is sit down with him and say, listen, you want to be great? This is the way you be great. He has to talk to him. And once Floyd really sits down and have the conversation with him, I think that this kid can go as far as he wants. I don't see Haney beating him. I don't see Tefilio Steve, whatever his name is, beating him. I don't see Garcia beating him. I don't see anyone beating this kid for a while.
Well, this was great. You said you wanted to bring boxing to Rolling Ramos. You bought boxing to Rolling Ramos. And this is the first time that I've been surrounded by Jamaicans. Shout out to you two.
Bad boy, man, bad boy. It's the way I thought.
That's it.
This is not the last time we'll see you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you.
It
Have
was
your people call my people. You come.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed every minute. And Tristan, you are a very knowledgeable, good guy. I love you. Brilliant.
Love you, man. Respect.
All the while. Bless up. So
have fun in the 6. We'll see you in Canada.
Yeah.
All right. Bless. Have a great night.
Good
All
night.
Right, you too.
And Tristan, it leaves me and you on here, my brother. And we gotta go into some NFL. That was great, by the way. Did you enjoy that?
Awesome.
Do you feel close to your roots?
Oh yeah. I mean, even before you got on, like just talking with him a little bit, I was like, oh man, he reminds me of my uncle. Like it was great. It was great.
You're tuned in to Rolling with Ramos, episode 103, but we're going to pay attention to the 3 because we're in season 2, and we're going to call this the Dwyane Wade edition. Tristan, week 13 power rankings. Number 1, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They stay at number 1. Number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs. They stay at number 2. Number 3, the New Orleans Saints. They stay at number 3. And number 4, Green Bay Packers. They stay at 4. Number 5, the Buffalo Bills. Nobody out the top 5 shifted, Tristan. Number 6, the Seattle Seahawks. They were 7 last week. Number 7, the Tennessee Titans. They move up 3. They were 10 last week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They moved down 2. They were 6 last week. The Indianapolis Colts. They were 8. They moved down to 9. And the Los Angeles Rams moved down to 10. They were 9 last week. Going down week 12's schedule in the longest week ever. Shout out to the coronavirus and the outbreak that is done to the Baltimore Ravens. If it's one thing the NFL is saying, they're saying, hey, you're going to get it. Go quarantine, get yourself together and come back because we ain't stopping no show. The Texans beat the Lions 41-25. The Washington football team gobble on Thanksgiving. Thank you very much. They beat the Cowboys 41-16. The Falcons beat the Raiders. That was a weird one. 43-6. The Bills, the Buffalo Bills, 27-17 over the Chargers. The Giants, 19-17 over the Bengals. Titans, 45-26 over the Colts. The Browns, 27-25 over the Jaguars. Vikings 28-27 over the Panthers. The Patriots beat the Cardinals 20-17. The Dolphins beat the Jets in a big one, 20-3. The Saints 31-3 over the Broncos in a big one. 49ers 23-20 over the Rams. The Chiefs beat the Buccaneers 27-24. The Pack beat the Bears in a divisional beat down 41-25. Seahawks 23-17 over the Eagles. And the Steelers, if you're not drinking that Steelers Kool-Aid, which I'm not, because the Ravens had their whole team eliminated and they still barely beat them. So I don't know if I want to do that. The Steelers beat the Ravens 19-14, but this is where I talk to you, Tristan. If you could look me in my eye. This is where I talk to you, because you've been waiting for this. You've been talking about this. I'm going to give you your time with this. Detroit Lions, Matt Patricia. According to ESPN.com, the Detroit Lions fired head coach Matt Patricia and general manager Bob Quinn after 2 straight seasons under 500, and a third where the team was again under 500 at midseason. Patricia's record, 13-29-1 since taking over as the Lions coach in 2018. Quinn had been the team's GM since 2016, and the Lions were 31-43-1 during his tenure. It was a hard decision. It shouldn't have been, because they are both terrific people and worked very hard and tirelessly for this organization. Owner Sheila Ford Hamp said Saturday it clearly wasn't working. It wasn't what we had hoped for when we hired them. So I don't know if there was an exact moment. It was something that we had been thinking about for several weeks. This is several weeks you started thinking about this and going back and forth and deciding. Lions offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell will be the team's interim head coach. Check this out. In December 2019, when the Lions decided to keep Quinn and Patricia for the 2020 season, then owner Martha Ford and then vice chair Sheila Ford Hamp said they expected to be playing meaningful games this December. They ain't going to be playing the meaningful games in December. Tristan, Matt Patricia's out of Detroit. You finally got what you wanted. How you feel about it? And 2, because I haven't heard your point of view on this. Joe Burrows. Everybody's sad about this one. How do you feel about the injury?
So let me do Joe Burrow first, because I'll be quicker on that. So for Joe Burrow, people that know me know I'm a big LSU fan. So of course I'm a big fan of Smoking Joe. Having a great year. I know it was between him and Justin Herbert for Rookie of the Year honors, and that looks like it's going to end up going to Justin Herbert, because he's having a phenomenal year for the Chargers. I'm also going to address that, by the way, but I digress. With Joe Burrow, the injury, I felt so bad because I don't want to say like people were predicting it or people were anticipating for something like this to happen, but you just knew the hits he was taking.
Yeah.
Because of that offensive line. It was just so, I just wish it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I think everyone after like week 2 or week 3, everyone was like, the Bengals just need to draft the offensive line with all their picks next year. Like that was it. Like, you don't need to draft anything else. You just need to draft a whole bunch of offensive linemen to protect this kid. You got your running back in Joe Mixon. You got Tyler Boyd, who's his favorite target right now. You got, AJ Green is still there. I mean, sometimes you got to put an APB out on him, but he's still there. You got your tight, you got your tight ends. You got all the weapons, but you don't have an offensive line. And without that offensive line, Joe Burrow was getting hit. It was so unfortunate. I was upset it was against our team. But I know he's going to come back great. I know he's going to come back good. They had reported today that he had successful surgery on the knee. So now it's just a matter of healing and rehab. But he was everything that you thought he was going to be coming out of college. And even with people that weren't sure, because it was like it was the 1 year, as awesome as it was the 1 year with him. But the thing that I saw with Joe in LSU, which made me feel confident that it would translate, is his football. When they say you have a feel for the game, like you just understand it in another level. That's what was Joe Burrow. His anticipation, his movement in the pocket, he just looked so natural and calm and polished that you were just like, look, this has to be able to translate. It wasn't too much tweaking you had to do. So I feel bad for that. Now, on to Matt Patricia.
You can't say I never did nothing for you.
Here's the thing. And I'm going to be quick about this too, because I've been saying it through Twitter. I've been saying it all season long. The problem I had with Matt Patricia is the problem that I had with the Detroit Lions in general is that I didn't understand how Jim Caldwell, who was their coach for 4 years, got you in the playoffs twice, and his only losing record that he had in those 4 years was a 7-9 record, and he gets fired. And then you bring in Matt Patricia, and Matt Patricia in these 3 years has not had a winning season. Not only has he not had a winning season, he dismantled the team that had 4 winning seasons under Jim Caldwell. He dismantled it to the point now that you have to start from scratch. You have to literally start from scratch with this team, with an aging franchise QB in Matt Stafford. I don't understand what made you think. No, I do understand, because everybody swears this Bill Belichick, he comes from the Bill Belichick tree. He's going to, he's a defensive whiz. He's going to do this, but. Everybody ain't Bill Belichick.
Yeah, we're learning that big time.
Everybody ain't Bill
Tom
Belichick.
Brady's learning it too.
Yeah. I mean, everybody ain't Bill Belichick, man. Everybody ain't Bill Belichick. We looking at Matt Patricia. Look what happened to Bill O'Brien. Everybody ain't Bill Belichick. Just because they come from that, don't mean they that. Look at what Josh McDaniels, the fiasco he had when he was the head coach in Denver. Like, not everybody is this guy. But y'all are swearing because they were all under him, like y'all just felt like they just had the remnants of Belichick in their philosophy. This is when I knew the Detroit Lions were doomed with Matt Patricia. When he had that press conference and he said, well, looking at this team, we got a lot of building to do. We got to break this down and build it from the ground up to get it where it needs to be. What are you talking about? They were just in the playoffs. What do you mean you got to build? What do you got to do? You just got to tweak. You ain't got to break it down. You just got to tweak some stuff maybe. And so for me, I feel for Matt Stafford, because I feel like Matt Stafford is not getting the respect that he really could get. And it's because he's with the Detroit Lions. I feel like I would love to see the Detroit Lions not only move on from Patricia, move on from the GM. I feel like they should move on from Matt Stafford, just for Matt Stafford's sake. Let him get a shot at going to a team that he can play and contend and compete. I feel horrible for Matt Stafford being there for as he's been there. There's a reason why Calvin Johnson left. There's a reason why you keep losing these guys with this franchise in particular, because they don't invest in the team the way they're supposed to. They get one player, one superstar player, and they ride that player to the end of the earth. They did it with Barry Sanders. They did it with Calvin Johnson. They're doing it now with Matt Stafford. You don't try to put other things around that star to make it happen. And that's unfortunate for that franchise. And it's completely despicable. But I'm glad Patricia's out. That means 3 coaches down, 1 more coach to go. Come on, New York Jets. You seeing it. Okay, the Texans did it. The Lions did it. Come on. The Falcons did it. It's your turn, New York. It's your turn. Adam Gase got to get out of there.
Speaking of putting stuff around a guy and having a generational guy and riding him, speaking of those terms, it's been an emotional 24 hours if you live on this side of town. And you know why. So when we have this conversation, I figured, because this has been the news this has been news since it came out. Everything's buzzing. Twitter, Instagram, anything you can think of that has to talk about this trade. Oh, it's buzzing. Yeah. Even if you didn't have any respect or love for these guys, these teams, this is what the news is, and this is what it's been. I know that this conversation, we're going to teeter-totter the line of emotion, and we're going to teeter-totter the line of what was right and what was wrong, and who wanted out, who wanted to keep in. So many conflicting reports. We're not surprised because this is DC. But we first take you into the thoughts of one of the person. I never thought that I would never see this person not in a Wizards uniform at all. And to have him coming back in Capital One Arena and the Dougie knot come on, and we don't see him dunk and do something in a Wizards uniform as far as a comeback, and we've seen him trying to we just spoke to Chris about changing your game. We're seeing this guy try to shift his game to understand that he's not that guy anymore to do those particular things. We were waiting for this. Number two, you won't get a chance to see it in the nation's capital. Dear DC, where do I ever begin? 10 years is a long time to think back on. I came to DC as a skinny 19-year-old with big dreams and goals. You embraced me and my family with open arms. You rocked with me from day one until now. From a young rookie to an all-star, I did my best to make you proud. Through good times like the Game 6 versus Boston, through injuries and rehab, I always felt the love from you. I appreciate you and will always have love for DC. I may not wear the jersey anymore, but I will never forget what it meant to represent for y'all. This isn't the way I thought I would say goodbye to the city, so I won't. I will say thank you. John Wall has been synonymous with DC as Ben's Chili Bowl, as Mumble Sauce. He is no longer a Washington Wizards, Tristan. Russell Westbrook is headed to the Washington Wizards, and John Wall is moving to the Houston Rockets in a significant swap of point guards. One an MVP, the other a number one overall draft pick. Just weeks before the season starts, the Wizards shipped a future lottery-protected first-round pick to the Rockets on Wednesday night. ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski was first with the news, later noting that the deal came together in a matter of hours. Shams Charania of The Athletics clarified the pick would be a protected 2023 first. Having the opportunity to acquire a player of Russell's caliber and character was something we could not pass up when looking at both the immediate and long-term future of our team, Wizards general manager Tommy Shepard said in a release. With that said, the decision to part ways with John, one of the greatest players in franchise history, was extremely difficult. What he has meant to our organization and our community is immeasurable and will not be forgotten. While Wall has played his entire professional career in the nation's capital, the move ends Westbrook's tenure in Houston after just a disappointing season. He arrived from Oklahoma City in July 2019 for Chris Paul and draft picks. The Rockets had hoped that the 32-year-old Westbrook would be the final piece they needed to win the first title since winning back-to-back championships in 1994-95. But instead, Houston was eliminated from the playoffs by the eventual champion Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference semifinals. Westbrook was the 2017 NBA MVP and is a 9-time All-Star, but has failed to win a title. Many questioned whether the pairings of the two ball-dominant guards like Westbrook and James Harden would work in Houston, but the longtime friends insisted that it would. After the Rockets were sent home from the playoffs early again, rumors started to swirl that the two weren't happy in Houston and both wanted out. Wall, the number one overall pick out of Kentucky in the 2010 draft, became the face of the franchise for Washington, a 5-time All-Star who reportedly helped get this team to the playoffs. But Wall's Wizards never reached 50 wins in a season or made it past the conference semifinals. Wall, who is 30, has averaged 19 points and 9.2 assists for his career. He has been troubled by injuries of late, appearing in only 41 games in 2017-2018 because of the left knee surgery, then just 32 in 2018-2019 because of a left heel problem that required an operation. While recovering from that, Wall tore his left Achilles tendon and sat out all of the last season. Yet he remained heavily involved in the DC community, most recently providing significant rent relief for Ward 8 residents. After a report surfaced that Wall wanted out of Washington, Shepard said on November 23rd that Wall didn't request to be moved when they spoke that morning. There's no plans to trade John, Shepard said during a video conference with reporters that day, but he also affirmed that his plan is to build around shooting guard Bradley Beal, whose scoring average of 30.3 points last season was second in the league behind Harden. Magic Johnson said this is going to work in DC. Your new Houston starting lineup It's John Wall, James Harden, who said that he requested John Wall, Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, Christian Wood. New Wizards starting lineup: Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, Rui Hachimura, Davis Bertans, and Thomas Bryant. Where do we start, Tristan? As a fan, are we really surprised? But I'm surprised. But where do we start?
I'm gonna say it as a fan of John Wall and watching the Wizards. As a fan, it was kind of a gut shot to see it because I remember when the Wizards drafted John Wall. I remember the excitement throughout. Um, I remember the excitement throughout the DMV area for John Wall coming. You had the mayor uh, doing the John Wall, as they called it then. They called the John Wall dance when they had the hand going like that. And even the first game when he got introduced and he was doing the Dougie down the line. Like I remember all those moments, and remember watching him at Kentucky. I'm like, yo, we got the most fastest point guard in the NBA on this team. Like, ain't nobody touching this dude when he matures. And that was the thing we kept saying because we were watching flashes of him at 19 doing what he was doing on the NBA court. We're like, man, when he peaks, it's going to be something to behold. And I just feel like as a fan, we just didn't get to see the most of it. We didn't get to see the best of it because, his body started, betraying him with tic-tac injuries here and there, and then the knee, then the Achilles, and it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. We were all kind of riding on Bradley Beal because,
what else do we have?
Yeah, John Wall wasn't there, and the rest of the team wasn't great. And we all remember the playoff series against Boston, Game 6. That was the last we really saw of John Wall, the greatness of John Wall per se. And even watching the Wizards the past couple years, every fan just kept saying, "Wait till John Wall comes back. Wait till John Wall comes back. It's gonna be crazy." And I just feel like, as a fan, let me keep referencing this. As a fan, I feel like the Wizards did it in disservice for the fans of the Wizards to not let us get an opportunity to see this man come back on the Wizards court because we missed out. It wasn't like he was a declining superstar. It wasn't like he was just getting less minutes and we're just waiting for him to fade out. We literally just didn't get to see him for basically 2.5 years. We just didn't get to see him, and so that was tough. And then, with him losing his mom, we all embraced him. I mean, we just wanted that moment when the arena opened up and they called the lineup and we hear, at guard from Kentucky, John Wall. Like we were ready to get that because we're like, all right, in the East, we got John Wall and Bradley Beal. Okay, and so as a fan, I'm just a little heartbroken to see that happen. Now, as an overall analyst of the game,
yes,
I think the Wizards won this, at least short term and possibly long term. And the reason why, this is not a knock on John Wall's ability, but again, it's an out of sight, out of mind. I don't know what you look like.
Yeah.
On the court. I see you've done the pickup games, but you were an all-star. All all-stars are going to look great in pickup games. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to look fantastic in a pickup game. I don't really know what you are in an NBA setting. Okay, you had a heel problem in one foot. You tore your Achilles on the other foot, and you had your surgery on your knee. And your entire game is predicated on your athleticism. You were once the fastest player in the NBA with a ball in your hand. There was no one touching you once you got into open floor with that ball. I don't know if you're that cat. I don't know if you're that same guy. So I don't know if you spark fear or danger to anybody. I'm not saying he doesn't, I just don't know. And now when I'm looking at him going to Houston to pair with James Harden, I'm like, so are you going to tell James Harden he has to play off the ball?
Yeah.
Are you going to take touches? Are you going to allow John Wall to bring the ball up? Because here's the thing. John Wall was never known to be a great shooter. So what are you doing? It's like Russell Westbrook all over again, except I don't know if John Wall's athleticism is still there. That's really what you're giving me, because he's not a great shooter. He hasn't been proven to be a great shooter. So you're going to have these two ball-dominant players on the floor. You just went through this experiment, Houston. You just did this.
Ding,
you have
ding.
two ball-dominant players on the floor. Are you going to tell James Harden, play off ball because you're the better shooter? John Wall, because you know John Wall can assist. He's great at assists, but it didn't work for Russell. Russell was great at assists. Can you tell James
Didn't
Harden?
work for Chris Paul neither, because he wasn't allowed to be the general he needed to be for the team, because James Harden has to be in control.
He has to be in control. So what are you getting? And that's what I'm saying. I think the Wizards kind of won out of this, because you're basically getting the same guy in a sense. I think Russell, I would edge Russell a little higher. But it's also the fact that I've seen Russell recently. I know what he's going to give me. And I know that Bradley Beal can play off the ball. I know Bradley Beal wants to play off the ball. So if I'm having Russell control the floor and Bradley Beal is at my wing, and then I got Rui Hachimura at my other wing, who had a decent rookie season, and then you can build around that, I think the Wizards, at least short term, I think the Wizards are going to look more promising than Houston. I think Houston's going to have a repeat.
Oh, this is the problem. It's career suicide where John Wall is going, and it couldn't be a worse time, because he's trying to resurge himself. And how can you resurge yourself in a situation that's already plummeting down 100 stairs?
Absolutely.
Where I'm at is it's two different scenarios for me. So one scenario, this is very reminiscent of Boston and Isaiah Thomas. And
yes.
What Isaiah Thomas and the game and losing his sister, and he's on injury, and you bring Kyrie Irving in, you basically bring in the same guy, but you bring in two different mentalities, because Kyrie Irving is not that superstar, I'm going to take care of the team, I'm a leader mentality type of guy. But you had that with IT, but you just didn't have the I guess the points in the bravado in being on the court that you wanted to have with Isaiah Thomas. But you have that in Kyrie Irving, because it gets no better than the ball handling skills and what he can do when Kyrie Irving is in the zone.
Right.
So on one end, I was pissed off to hear reports of, well, John Wall wanted out. He forced himself out. It sounded to me as if Tommy Shepard, you're already in talks with Houston. A rumor isn't a rumor unless two people are talking. So now we know that. So this is the truth. John Wall finds out about it, and he kind of gives them the, you know how us as women can be, get out, but we want you to stay. But DC didn't fall for the bait. They told him, well, if you're going to go, go. Because we already wanted to do this anyway. We just wanted to see how much on board. We don't want to look like the bad guy. And it's easy for people in organizations in DC not want to look like the bad guy, because when it comes to African-American athletes in this city, we're always the bad guy, and loyalty never happens. So on one end, they did a disservice as far as loyalty to John Wall, because I do not think specifically he wants to leave here. I don't think he wants to go. As far as Russell Westbrook, it's ironic, because when we're talking about Houston and the issues that Houston has, you know, my main argument is, why are we highlighting the flaws of Russell Westbrook in this conversation? We have nothing to say about James Harden. And now he wants to stay. He was about to abandon the whole ship, the ship that he built that crumbled, and he can never get Stars cannot come to Houston and play with this guy because he is not showing that he's a team player. He is not showing. We're not even talking about pay cuts. You can't change your game to play with somebody else to win a championship. So we automatically are finding out that this is all about you and this is your character issue and this is just who you are.
Right.
But on the flip, now I'm saying I want to highlight Russell Westbrook's flaws because just a week ago, we didn't know where the hell he was going. We couldn't figure out where was the best fit for this guy. And the only reason this looks like the best fit is because he knows the coach. So ironically, the only way we know that you can fit here is because Scott Brooks knows how to coach you.
And the contract.
Yes. And to say Bradley Beal is now your future, time out, wait a minute. I understand that he's heightened his career and what he did last year was great. He should not have been snubbed for all of the awards that he was snubbed in. He should have been an all-star. But at the same time, everything he did, all the gas that he propelled in that court, the Wizards were still mediocre in an Eastern Conference where LeBron James is no longer in. And we're just looking for who's going to come up and emerge in the Eastern Conference.
I agree.
Regardless of the fact of what Bradley Beal was doing, everybody was waiting for number 2 to come back. And for the first time in a long time, Washington Wizards, I don't understand. You have Bradley Beal and John Wall healthy back there in this backcourt. And you did excellent. You did not do bad at all in free agent. So you now have the team that can go around, not just Bradley Beal showing you that he can stay healthy and produce. If by chance you get John back and he's not going to be John Wall of who he was, but half the man of something different, you have a complete team damn near almost, and you have the emergence of guys that played good last year. So I'm stuck on this one. I get the contract. I get the contract, but don't make John the scapegoat for the $180 million you gave him.
I think there's something that they know of John Wall. I think there's something they know that other people don't know. I really do.
There has to be something internal for us not to know, because on the outside looking in, you like, what the hell is going on?
Right. And again, for me, it's not to knock Russell. Like I want people to understand. I'm not trying to knock either player.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to knock either player. I just want to figure out, there's got to be something, because this looked like the way you guys did the draft, the way you guys did free agency, it just made sense. A healthy John Wall with a healthy Bradley Beal and the young talent that you got. It's a young team. Now, the Wizards had gotten rid of a lot of those old player contracts, the Otto Porters of the world, all those guys, got them out. Okay, you got a young squad. And to have the veteran leadership of John Wall it's kind of like what? But again, the reason why I say that I still feel like the Wizards come out of this is because I still have faith in Russell Westbrook. And I feel like Russell Westbrook is coming into a situation where it's like, you're the guy at the point. Bradley Beal's our player. He's our star. He's our scorer. But you're the guy that's going to run it. The only concern I have for Russell Westbrook,
is he the worker or doesn't on a nightly basis?
Well, not even just that. When it comes down to a bucket needing to be made to win the game, can Russell get out of his own way to understand that Bradley Beal's a better shooter than you? If he's open, I need you to pass the ball.
Devil's advocate, if this does not work, that will be how many teams that has not worked for Russell Westbrook, and how will that make the Wizards look that you let your franchise player go for this guy? And it's crazy because we're talking about Russell Westbrook. I've seen as if he ain't nothing. We know he's something, but we also have seen the non-production. So we're unsure of what we're going to get with him neither. But it's a perfect trade because you just had to swap a guard for a guard and swap a star for a star and give him one pick. It's not like it came to all these other conglomerates that every other trade has come to. But what's the devil advocate if this does not work in DC? What will everybody what will everybody be saying? Because if the city's in a buzz as it is now,
it will depend on how John Wall does in Houston. Because if their seasons are relatively similar, then it's just like, okay, we took a swing at it, we missed. Okay, it is what it is. Because the contracts are the same. So it's not like you took on a bigger contract. The pick is not till 2023, and it's a protected pick. So you didn't really lose anything if you're the Wizards. So it's just
but what
like,
about the appeal of stars? Because John Wall could get somebody else to come over there. Nobody's gonna.
no, we
wants
can't
to
say
come
that.
play?
Oh, no, we can't
You
say
don't
that.
think so?
We can't say that because we don't know what John Wall looks like. It's all contingent on what he looks like. We don't know. So we can't say John Wall can get people to come to Houston. Can't say that because we don't know what he looks like. And right now, don't nobody want to play with James Harden. So if Houston don't find a way to dump James Harden, they're going to have a hard time getting stars over here because no star has been able to work with him. So it's not like it hasn't worked on the court. It's not only that it's not working on the court, but every single star that has left seems to have had some kind of conflict or disagreement with Harden. So it's more pressure with Wall because one, Wall has to show that he can still ball at a high level. Two, you got to hope that he can coexist with James Harden because so far, every superstar that's gone there, it has not come to pass. So we can't say that. That's why I'm looking at the Wizards. It's a little more favorable. I'm not saying it's great, but it looks a little more favorable.
It looks a little bit more peaceful.
Yes.
Than it was going to look in Houston.
And it's the fact that they're in the East. That is a big deal. It's the fact that they're in the East.
I hope he pulls a Chris Paul and be like, look what I did out here. But that's only with or without James Harden. If we just eliminate James Harden out of this and he stays with the Houston Rockets, in the event, I would like to see John Wall win individually on his own to at least show the world that, I was gone, but to do that on this team, I do not think will be his final stop. I think that he will be somewhere else next year. James Harden, you need to look within because you obviously have some issue in this league. Nobody wants to play. You couldn't even play with your friend that you played with years ago. That's an issue. I said this conversation was going to teeter-totter the line of emotional and what's right and what's wrong and how much are we going to blame the Wizards and how much do we believe John wanted. In the event, we still wish John Wall the best. Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Tom Ford comes up on the screen and the fire comes up and you're sitting in the media seats and John Wall comes on there. He was DC. You can't say that he wasn't.
Absolutely. And let me say this real quick in regards to DC sports. At some point,
we got to keep a generational guy.
The only person we can speak for, is Alex Ovechkin. And y'all were close to getting rid of him. Y'all were close.
And look how long he had to pay his dues. He got you one. You can shut up. There's nothing else you can have to say to this man.
When you really think about it, DC has had Bryce Harper, John Wall, RG3, and Alex Ovechkin in the main sports that are here. And the only person that did it for us was Alex Ovechkin. Y'all shipped out Bryce. RG3 didn't work out. John Wall is now gone. This area can't keep a generational star where we can hang our hat like this is our guy. We drafted him. We groomed him. He's our man. All we got is Alex. That's the only we can speak on is Alex Ovechkin. That is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling that it's like that. I mean, maybe we can go with Christy Tolliver for the Mystics because she played at Maryland, won a title at Maryland, came to the Mystics, won a title for the Mystics. So we could probably put her in that regard as well. But there's just no one, like you said, the generational superstar. We can't keep him, and that is a problem.
Or we end up disrespecting them and acting like they did nothing. And most of the time, it has everything to do with the color of the skin. Look what we did with the Doug Williams.
What?
Well, the victor becomes a spoil in this trade and whatever happens. But, you know, we got two people that's over West that ain't worried about what's going on over these because they getting paid, baby, pulling up the W's. Oh, man, LeBron will have earned $435 million in his career after the extension through 2022-23 is done. The King agrees to a 2-year, $85 million contract extension with the Los Angeles Lakers. Tristan, if we break that contract down, in 2 years, it's $85.7 million. In a month, it's $3.57 million. In a day, he'll make $117,397. In an hour, he'll make $4,891. In a minute, that's $82. In a second, that's $1.36. And also, shout out to Anthony Davis, 5-year, $190 million max contract with the Lakers, which gives him a chance to which gave him the chance to have everything he wants on all cylinders and dot his I's and cross his T's. Not to mention, he'll be with the King until the King decides he wants to leave.
Shout outs to Rob Pelinka. Shout outs to
you said that so calm.
Because I didn't think the Lakers can get back to this kind of place.
Beautifulness.
I just didn't think it was going to get back here like that. And shout outs to Jeannie Buss, shout outs to Clutch Sports. You know, I mean, they did that.
I thought we were going to need Jerry West back, baby. I'm good.
I thought so too, but I guess I was wrong. I mean, you know, LeBron, you know, signing that contract is basically saying, hey, I'm good here with the Lakers. I want to finish my career here in the purple and gold. And Anthony Davis getting signed to his deal, really signed it on a discount, honestly. Really signed it on a discount for the 5 years. So for it to only be $190 for 5 years, yeah, he did on a discount. And basically said, hey, when LeBron goes, I'm going to be the guy on this team. And,
or I can go somewhere else and finish my career.
Yeah, I mean, but for the foreseeable future, Lakerland is in great hands with the King and the Brown. It's awesome.
And we closed the books because this one was awesome. I almost jumped ship because I was tired. I'm glad I didn't. Episode 103. Emphasis on the 3, the Dwyane Wade edition.
Right.
I got to figure out how I'm going to put that together because it's not working for me inside yet, but we're going to figure this out.
We're going to figure it out.
America, we will have one more show. Well, 2. We have a show next Thursday, which we will have the lovely and the beautiful Courtney Smith and Chanel Starling on joining us. We know what they can bring down the wire. And if we're lucky, we will have somebody big for this NBA preview on the 17th, which will be our last show of the new year. And when we get to the new year, oh my gosh, that first show of the new year, you want to tune into that. Don't call me rainbows for nothing. You can't never say I didn't do anything for you, Tristan, because when you see this person, you're going to say, wow. But anyways, I'm going to say it like I say it every week. I don't care if it does not rhyme. It's still mine. I am Mikkel at Kevin McKell Tristan. I'll see you next week, babe.
See you next week.
Peace.